We go to the senior producer of NFL Films, also one of the co-hosts on the ESPN NFL Matchup show. It is one Greg Cosell joining us to talk Monday Night Football between the Bills and the Patriots, part two. And Greg, this one again is going to happen without Stephon Gilmore. He missed the first matchup between these two teams with an injury in Week 8, and he is not going to be a part of it again here in Week 16, which is probably something that the Patriots are not looking forward to, knowing how much the Bills spread them out and throw the football.
Yeah, I just have to comment, though, seeing that open, I think Tasker looks exactly the same now as he did as a player.
I don't, without my helmet
on. You are
on,
not
right?
the first person to say that this week, Greg. We had Ruben Brown, one of his former teammates, on the show, and he said the same thing.
Ruben has to say that, though. I've got pictures of him. So, so Greg, what about Greg?
Well,
go ahead.
What's going to be interesting, Chris, about, I guess, this game is I believe that Belichick has not committed to who will be the starting quarterback.
No.
Right. That's kind of interesting. You're right, and that remains to be seen. But we do know who the quarterback of the Bills is, and he's the AFC Offensive Player of the Week for the fourth time, which is far and away beyond expectation. So he's kept it going all season, Greg. It's been even from where he was last year, it's almost transformational. Forget where he was 2 years ago.
No, it's remarkable, and it's funny. He's a guy I love talking about because watching him, there's so much improvement besides the obvious improvement in his game. I mean, we can obviously see that the ball is being thrown with much better ball location. He's more consistent with that. But to me, a lot of it is the little things. I think he's so much better before the snap of the ball. I mean, there was a play this week to me that kind of spoke to that. And it's just an example. Obviously, it's the most recent one. And I just watched that tape, I think yesterday, when he hit Beasley for 27 yards on 3rd and 3 in the fourth quarter, the way he read the slot blitz pre-snap. And the thing that I loved is not only did he read the slot blitz pre-snap, but then the post-snap execution, because he hit Beasley in the second window because Jewell expanded and took away the slant. So examples like that of just pre-snap recognition, post-snap execution. I tell you, the other play that really stood out to me and was the throw to Knox for 27 yards. I think it was 27 yards, but it was the throw to Knox. And what I really, really loved about that was a basic concept that the Bills run. It's their double post crosser concept that they run with different players, but he had pressure on that. So that means he had to throw the ball early. So you can't throw it the same way that you would throw it if the play just played out normally where you drop back, hit your back foot. So he had to throw the ball almost when Knox was on the far hash and he's running the crosser. So what did he do? He knew he had to take something off the throw because you couldn't throw it with the same speed and pace that you would throw it if it was a normal situation. So to me, just the details and the nuances of the position, as I watch Josh Allen week to week, those are the areas in which I think he's improved so dramatically. The obvious is the obvious. Everybody can see that, but he's just gotten so much better in the details and nuances of the position.
Yeah, I would say, Greg, if there is still one part of Josh Allen's game that I believe is still underrated, I think it's his football smarts. I know the Wonderlic test isn't the end-all, be-all, but in that 2018 draft class, his Wonderlic score was the highest of the bunch. And from what I've been told, it wasn't close. And I think that kind of goes by the board sometimes. Not only is this a guy who wants to be great and has a work ethic to accomplish that, but he's also got the brain to dissect and cut up all these defenses and make those on-the-fly adjustments that you were just speaking about post-snap. I mean, we had one of his other teammates mic'd up for the game last week against Denver, and he's on the bench, and you hear him talking to the receiver, and the receiver says, well, why didn't you throw that to me? And he said, because I saw the safety creeping backside. He was trying to bait me into throwing it to you, so I had to go to Dawson Knox instead. And, I mean, that's just some of that post-snap acumen that you're talking about.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is I think he's getting much, much smarter when he does run. I think he's getting much, much smarter in terms of on certain throws, just throwing it away. I think he's just growing and understanding that in this league, you don't have to make every single play, which for a quarterback with his kind of skill set, where he does have at times that sort of Superman ability, is you learn that, hey, you can't do that in this league on every single play. And there's nothing wrong, if you're forced out of the pocket and you're running to the sideline and there's nothing there and it's first or second down, you know what? Throw it out of bounds. You have another play. And I think that speaks, the other thing that speaks to is his red zone efficiency, because he does not make bad decisions in the red zone.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really helped them. It seemed like when we were doing the game on radio, there were like 5 touchdowns that got called back in this game. There were 2 on one drive. And then it was the same drive. They had 2 touchdowns called back, one by Lee Smith, one by Isaiah McKenzie. And then they got what I thought stabbed in the back on the spot with Zach Moss going in on a 4th down. They turned it over on downs.
I thought that was a first down watching it on TV.
I thought it was a first down, no question. But all of that stuff happens. It seemed like they were scoring at will and getting them all called back. But I thought that red zone efficiency was really on display at that. And even when they
against the number 1 red zone defense in football.
And even when they get 1st and goal on the 30 and it takes them 2 plays to score after going the wrong direction. I mean, I just thought it was a complete beatdown of the Broncos. And Josh really, he was the engine that drove that team. You say what you want about Steph Diggs, the running game or whatever, but Josh Allen really elevated that entire team.
No, and like I said, even, the ball location is pretty remarkable, because you just don't see guys improve like that. And obviously the long ball to Diggs, I think it was a 55-yarder, you couldn't have handed it to him any better. But I thought he had a 15-yard sort of out route comeback to Diggs in the second quarter. I'm sure you guys remember the play. And I thought that was very representative of his dramatic improvement in ball location, because Diggs kind of ran, like I said, it was kind of an out route comeback versus the inside leverage corner Bosby. Boy, and he placed it perfectly on the outside away from Bosby. And, that's not a throw that we would have expected him to make last year, certainly not as a rookie. And he's just, to me, the improvement in his game, both the obvious ones and the more subtle, nuanced ones, it's really high level. And again, I know maybe there's some people who are waiting for him to have a bad game. Who knows? And then it doesn't mean he's never going to have a bad play. I mean, we get caught up in everything having to be one extreme or the other extreme. And Steve, from playing, that's not the way it works. The other players, they get paid. The other coaches get paid too. This league's not so easy. There's going to be some bad plays. But overall, I think the improvement has really been dramatic. And there's just, I think, even in his movement, I think you just see a better sense of poise and composure. He doesn't seem as frenetic and chaotic as he did a year ago, and certainly as a rookie.
And with that in mind, Greg, we know that Belichick basically dared the Bills to run in the last matchup, and they did, to the tune of 190 yards.
Yeah, I remember that.
What are you anticipating the second go-round? Because, as we know, Coach Belichick never really gives you the same thing twice, especially division opponents. So what do you think he does going into this one to kind of keep the wraps on Josh from taking over the game?
Well, I think he'll do it differently, Chris, but I think the general approach will be the same, because one thing we know about Belichick is he's not going to play defense to potentially give up big plays. That's the thing. Right. So I think he's going to try to make Josh have to work through progressions. Look, last time they played, he played a ton of man coverage. I don't know if he'll do – that might be what's different. Maybe he won't play as much man, but he's definitely going to make Josh work going through progressions. I still believe that he would prefer that Josh Allen hand the ball off. Now, Stephon Diggs, is he dealing with an injury? Is he due to play?
He's practicing today. He got stepped on with about – you probably saw a review in the film. He got stepped on at the end of a play, and that's what caused his foot injury. But he is practicing today. In what capacity, we do not yet know, but he is practicing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if he does not play, that might change the approach. But I still – now, how about John Brown? Is he due to play?
He's practicing, but he is still on IR at this point. I don't think they feel like there's any sense to rush him back right now, with the division locked up, and the offense really hasn't suffered without him all that much.
No, No, the only reason I'm asking is because at the end of the day, one thing we know about Belichick is he's a big believer in not allowing big plays. And obviously every D coordinator will say that, but the Patriots normally do not do that. So I think when he looks at this Bills team, he knows that Josh Allen is the number one weapon here. And I think that he would say, hey, if they want to hand the ball off to Moss and Singletary 30 times, that's okay. Obviously, we want to stop them, but I think he'd rather have that happen than Josh push the ball down the field for 20-plus, 25-plus yard completions.
What have you seen from the Bills running game? I was having this conversation earlier with Brownie about how the last two games, particularly the Pittsburgh game where they had 7 minutes, 11 seconds left on the clock, and they ran it all out. And then in a game against the Broncos, they looked like they were going to try and run the clock out the same way, and they snapped a 51-yard run off and went up by 20, right? I mean, so it looks and even during the game at different times. And I noticed, too, a lot on second down runs. They were really having their way with Denver in the running game. So how is Buffalo's running game if they do get into a slugfest with New England?
You know, I think it's funny. I think Zach Moss is starting to show some of the traits we saw in college, sort of that grinder, sustaining grinder, urgent, competitive runner. He's not necessarily a big play runner, but I think we're starting to see him show those traits where he gets 5 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards. It seems they like to run the outside zone play to the left a lot. And he's been featured in that. Of course, now we're seeing one to the right, but I think that he's starting to show what I imagine is the reason why they drafted him, because when you draft a back in the third round, you expect him to play and be a factor. So, you know, he has those kinds of traits, which I think work extremely well with a quarterback like Josh, because if you can stay on schedule, a quarterback like Josh Allen, with his ability to make plays with his legs, if needed, really becomes a big factor and very difficult to defend. So, look, I've always believed that deep down they would like to run the ball more, but they've been inconsistent doing it, and Josh has been so good that they've ultimately stayed with what works. You know, keep one thing in mind. The last time they played New England was the only game this season in which Josh had less than 20 pass attempts. And I think he had 18 in that. And there have been numerous games this year where he's been in the 40-plus range. So, you know, we'll see how they approach the game. At this point, we don't know who New England's quarterback will be. So, and if it is Cam Newton or whoever it is, the point is with Cam Newton, what's so obvious watching tape is they're telling you by what they're doing on offense that they don't really want Cam Newton throwing the football.
And so with that in mind, and I know it's a small sample size, but let's just say even at some point in the game, Jarrett Stidham enters. How might things change based on the limited sample size that you've seen, how their offense might change with Stidham in the game?
Well, it becomes more conventional, Chris, because obviously you're not going to get the quarterback run game. So it becomes far more conventional, which doesn't mean it's easier to defend. I guess it does in a sense, because there's less you have to defend and less you have to be concerned about. He's essentially a pocket quarterback. He can move a little bit. You know, he can, if obviously the pocket breaks down, he can move. He's not a statue, but he's not a guy that's going to beat you out of the pocket with any consistency, and he's not going to beat you with design runs. So therefore, the way you rush the quarterback changes. You don't need. I don't know if they have a spy concept in mind if Newton plays, but you certainly don't need to do that with Jarrett Stidham. So just the overall defensive approach changes, and obviously they're practicing both these things this week because they just don't know. And my guess is Belichick's not going to ring the bell and make a big public announcement.
I'd
love to see it, though.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah,
Bill Belichick is a town crier. That would be great.
Let's go down. The Bills play the Dolphins in Week 17. I know it's a couple of weeks out. It's on the horizon, and we don't even know what that game's going to mean, if anything. But Tua has been playing for the Dolphins. Has he shown enough? This last week, I got to say, showed me that Miami fans have been screaming about for a while. They love the guy, and I saw a little bit of what we used to see in Josh in Tua. I mean, he seemed like he's got a ceiling that's going to be able to make him the Miami quarterback going forward. What do you think about him?
Oh, well, he will be, because obviously they drafted him 5th. He's their quarterback. You know, I think for the most part, he's what I saw on tape coming out of Alabama, and believe it or not, Belichick talked about him last. Belichick is phenomenal in his press conferences when you ask him about opposing players, and I'm so anxious to see what he says about Josh, first of all. But he's so good when you ask him about opposing players. As long as you don't ask him about the game plan, as you guys know, he'll talk about opposing players and their strengths, weaknesses, their traits. And it made me feel very good because almost everything he said about Tua, that was basically my evaluation sheet coming out of Alabama. He's not really an athletic movement player. Now, can he move? Yes. And people should not be fooled by the fact that, he scored a rushing touchdown or two. He's essentially a rhythmic pocket player. And that's the way Chan Gailey is using him. That's the way the offense is designed. He's very, very good at that. I think he has a really good feel for the route concepts versus the defense. And the ball comes out with timing, with rhythm. Not a big-armed kid. He can make throws, but he's not big-armed. But he just has, to me, a very good feel for the passing game.
What do we anticipate we will see, Greg, from the Rams after their shocking loss to the Jets last week? They have a giant division game against Seattle this week of enormous proportions now that they're a game behind after that loss. So are we expecting maybe that bounce-back performance from this group where, they look like they have some sense of urgency, which wasn't the case last week? What happens?
Yeah, I guess they'll be ready to play. That would be my guess. You know what I think you'll see from the Rams? I think you'll see a lot of no-huddle tempo because Sean McVay has used that selectively throughout the season. It's a good way to get your offense into it right away. And the other thing it does against Seattle is it limits pre-snap movement, and it also limits Jamal Adams as a blitzer. But by the way, one thing that's very interesting, and people I'm sure are not aware of this, because Jamal Adams broke the record for sacks, I guess, by a defensive back in a season. When they blitz Jamal Adams, and I do have the numbers, but I'm not going to sit here and recite numbers, but when they blitz Jamal Adams, quarterbacks eat up the Seahawks defense. He gets sacks, but the overall numbers against the Seahawks when he blitzes, which is something like 90-plus times this year, the numbers are off the charts for the offense. They eat up the Seahawks defense when he blitzes.
Are you talking like a completion percentage around 75, 80%? Like, what are we talking about?
It's over 70. It's a ton of yards. It's a ton of yards per attempt, touchdowns, no interceptions.
Wow.
So other than the sacks that he gets, which obviously are very dramatic and visual, they don't do well as a defense when he blitzes.
One thing I got to ask you before we go, this week the Pro Bowl balloting came out. We've talked about...
I didn't even look at that.
Right, but we've talked about Jordan Poyer on the show before. You seem to like the way he has played.
One of my favorite safeties.
Right, and he was, he didn't get in the Pro Bowl, and I was wondering, could you just give us a real affirmation? This is not just a, Bills fanboy talking about how great Jordan Poyer is. You agree how good a safety he is.
I think Jordan Poyer is one of the best safeties in the NFL. I think he's complete. He's multidimensional. They use him more in the box than they do hide, but I think Poyer can play in the box. He can play on the back end. He's very competitive and good against the run. They use him as a blitzer at times. To me, and again, I'm not charting every safety in the league, so but I think when you talk about the top safeties in the league, and I've seen enough, believe me, because I try to get through as many games as I can every single week, and by this time of the year, I've seen every team. I think Jordan Poyer is one of the best safeties in the NFL when you talk about a complete skill set and how he can be used in the context of a defense.
All right, Greg, and enjoy the holiday weekend, and I'm sure you'll be crunching film throughout the weekend before that big Monday night game between the Bills and the Patriots. Thanks for the insight.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys, have a great holiday. Thanks so much.
You too.
All right, take care. That's Greg Cosell from NFL Films and the ESPN NFL Matchup Show. And Greg did tell us that because the Bills are playing on Monday night, that the Bills-Patriots game will be featured on the Matchup Show this week. So be sure to catch that early Saturday or Sunday morning.